Hello everyone,
Hello.
and welcome to the webinar. It's a great pleasure to have Cindy back to do a webinar on somatic empathy. I've got a slide. Please say hi in the chat, by the way, and join us there. Here's a little picture and a little bit of a few words about Cindy. I'm going to ask a poll in a minute, find out whether you've actually met Cindy online or in person. But you probably know she's pretty well known for her knowledge and her research into somatic empathy and how it applies to shiatsu. She's also a body worker, a qigong teacher, very famous in this area, a research biologist, an author, and I've got one of her books right here just to prove it. Okay, Wild Health, fascinating book about self-medicating animals. And she's writing another book soon as well, which we're all waiting for with bated breath. Recently, if you were part of our climate emergency, you would have met Cindy. She was one of the best received speakers about how we can change, value change. So that's Cindy. So let me just run a poll, and we can just see how well you know Cindy. I'm going to share that now. So you should see that flash up. Have you met her before on a webinar or in person? Yes, lots of times. Yes, a few times. Once. Or no, this is my first time, just to see if it's a new audience that we've got for Cindy.
That's quite interesting, isn't it?
We've got a third. A third have not met you before, Cindy. So there we are.
Okay.
Brilliant. Okay, excellent. So I've got your slides here. I'll just load them up, and then it's over to you, Cindy. Thank you so much for giving your time. It's always a pleasure to have you on one of our webinars.
Thanks for having me.
And there we are.
Okay, so somatic empathy and how it relates to shiatsu. Now, I'm probably not going to be telling you anything that you don't already experience, but what I hope to do is to bring you up to date with what scientists are saying about our experience during shiatsu. Science is always lagging behind our experience, so they are sort of doing baby steps, if you like, towards understanding what happens during shiatsu treatments. So one of the things we have to do when we're offering shiatsu is we have to gather information about our client before, during, and after the treatment, and a lot of this we do consciously, by asking questions and taking records, but most of it, by far the majority of it, is unconscious, and that's what we're talking about today, is all that sort of non-verbal information gathering that takes place before, during, and after shiatsu treatments. So what it comes down to is that we've got two very distinct ways of understanding anything. We've got two types of intelligence, if you like. So we're kind of like a hybrid car. We've got a hybrid system of intelligence. And one of these is very, very old, and it's loosely lumped together as experiential intuitive knowing. And that's basically when you're feeling your way into understanding something or someone. It's embodied, it's non-conscious, non-verbal, it's very, very quick, and it relies on older parts of the brain, bits of the brain before the cerebral cortex. I don't know if you know that us higher mammals
we like to think, right?
have evolved a cerebral cortex, and that seems to give us a slightly different type of intelligence, and indeed it does, because that's the bit that gives us our thinking, analytical, rational way of understanding the world. But it's much slower, although it's conscious, so we are aware of what it's doing. It's very linguistic, and it relies almost totally on this cerebral cortex. We're not the only species who've got a cerebral cortex. Lots of other mammals have, and dolphins have much bigger ones than us. So we've got these two ways of understanding, and so we can understand our clients by either of these modes. And they're completely separate neurological systems. One of them's really old in the old part of the brain, and the other one's very modern, sort of high-tech, analytical, rational part of the brain, which, as you know, is very dominant in our society. Now, the thing is that psychologists have worked out, or they've discovered through tests, that we all tend to prefer one way or the other. So we can all use both, but we have preferences. And we tend to, by a certain age, are only, predominantly relying on one way or the other. And you can do all sorts of tests on the internet to find out which one you are. But I suspect most shiatsu people are going to be experiential intuitive. I don't know. It just tends to attract us people who feel rather than think about what's going on, or are good at feeling. A lot of people who are highly analytical, rational, have no awareness of feeling anything. And, at the extreme, they have no awareness of what their body is doing. And
I
so
think
on.
we've all had clients like that, and it's always a surprise when you get a client like that, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah. I've had, yes. Yeah, I had a client once who started crying, and he said, "Oh, I've got water coming out of my eyes." Yes, don't worry about it. Yeah, so we're going to be exploring this bit, this feeling, experiential, intuitive. Now, the experiential bit means that we learn through experience, we learn through doing and feeling. The intuitive bit means that it's non-conscious processing. Yeah, it means intuitive thinking means that it's all going on unconsciously and suddenly you can pull it out. Yeah, whereas the analytical, rational, the thinking processes are mainly in your conscious awareness. So these two different ways of thinking about the world matter because science has only just begun to get interested in the experiential intuitive. Right. So, don't know if you can read that. I'll give you a few minutes. This is a craniosacral therapist reporting her experiential intuitive way of working. So this sounds very familiar to me. Getting feelings in your own body that you know are not yours. And because you're in the context of working with a client, you can assume that they are from the client. And this sort of experience has been dismissed up until really recently by scientists as being a little bit woo-woo, a little bit out there, and or just your imagination. And but it's taken off. There's a huge interest now in finding out what's going on because they do now believe that there is something going on. And they want to know how it works because it's very interesting because all this, how you affect people unconsciously is suddenly very interesting. And it's called, the research field is called social perception. So it's how we perceive what's going on socially. Okay. And they're calling it somatic empathy and giving it a definition of experiencing what other people feel while being aware that this vicarious state is produced by someone else. So even though that sounds quite simple, it's actually quite a lot of complexity in there, in that the assumption is that you have worked out it belongs to someone else. A lot of the time when we are feeling odd things, we're not aware of where it's coming from or who it's coming from. Yeah. And so we're not always in this state of somatic empathy of knowing that we've got a vicarious experience from someone else. But this is what they're interested in, is this sort of precise experience of, this belongs to someone else, it's not yours. Right. Yeah. And this is being studied by neuroscientists who are looking at what they call the social brain. Because, as we'll find out, I don't know if I've got it, I haven't got the slides in this, but yeah, brains, when they interact, they form a network and have an emergent property, a new unique state that does not exist in one or other brain. And so that is really interesting to neuroscientists. They want to know what's going on, how that works.
Again, you didn't quite get that.
I tried to slip that in.
Again.
Well, it's called brain coupling. Oh, yeah. And when two people are interacting and they're both interested in each other, like their attention is focused on each other and they're trying to understand each other, the brains get into an informational loop of sensing and receiving that forms a new unique brain state that doesn't exist in either one brain or the other.
That's like a kind of what we call resonance, or being in connection with someone. Is that what it is?
Yes, you can feel it as that, but when a neuroscientist measures it, they see, a different pattern that does not exist in any one brain.
Amazing.
And yeah, so there some people are calling it networked brains, other people are calling it a mega mind. I think a mega mind is pretty better. Yes, I'm just going into my mega mind now. So how does it work? Well, this is going to disappoint you. It's not proximity on its own. It's not hands-on contact on its own. It's not a localized energy field on its own, and it's not being able to see what's going on its own. Now, all those things are incredibly useful and incredibly involved if they're there. If proximity exists, then you'll use it. If hands-on contact exists, you'll use it, and so on. But you don't need any of those things for somatic empathy to happen.
Right. Okay.
Right? So there's something else.
It makes me think about it makes me think about distance sessions. When I do like a phone call and I'll talk to the person for 5 or 10 minutes, and then I'll stop talking to them, put the phone down, and then I'll do a structured exercise. And what I realize now is what I must be doing is I must be tapping into the subconscious information that I picked up from their voice and all that kind of stuff. I guess that's what's happening. But it feels so concrete. Definitely. It feels just like they're actually there.
Yeah, well, they are, as in you're simulating them, and we'll get on to what's going on, I hope, in a minute.
Sorry to interrupt you.
But yeah, or we'll come back to that. But it's important that they are as real as anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, most of our cognition, most of our mental processing is non-conscious. And I'm saying non-conscious rather than unconscious because it is incredibly aware. Yeah, so it is, and we've got all sorts of problems with the terminology around consciousness and mind. But most of what our mind does, we are not aware of, but it is aware of what's going on around us. And the only way we know that is because the body responds without us knowing.
Right.
Yeah. So some are, I've used the word unconscious back here again, because that's what most of us use in terminology. We unconsciously scan the world and have a bodily response to people without being consciously aware of responding.
Right.
And it can even happen before our normal senses have had a chance to process sensory signals. And this is what's blowing people's minds in neuroscience. It's like, well, how is that working then? So the body will, so for example, let's take people who are cortically blind. That means they've got damage in the visual cortex, which processes vision, right? So they can't see anything. Now, if you put a photograph in front of them, they can't see it. But if you put a photograph of a facial expression, their face will mimic the facial expression.
No, really?
Yes. And it's called affective blindside.
That's incredible.
Yeah. but what they think is going on is that the need to assess emotion in other people is so primal that it precedes the evolution of our visual cortex.
Wow. So what's the physics behind it, though? How is the information transmitted then? Do they know?
Well, they're trying to use a biological route of there must be a visual pathway that's primitive that we don't know about, because their eyes are open.
Yeah.
Do you see what I
I
mean?
see. Yeah.
And they even though they're blind.
I see. The information somehow getting in there.
So they're trying to, but they haven't found it. So, we'll just let them funnel off.
Worry about that.
Worry about that, yeah. Because they couldn't possibly discuss fields, but there you go.
No. Interesting.
So they are having to cope with the fact that our body responds to people often before our senses have even detected anything, and definitely without us consciously knowing what is going on.
Yeah.
So they come up with a theory that goes, we feel first and then we think, and this comes back to like the evolution of brains and the evolution of sensing. So what happened was, in our ancestors, early ancestors back before they evolved complicated brains, everything had to feel to understand.
Mm-hmm.
And only later did it emerge that you could think to understand.
Right.
Yeah. And we're still stuck with that. So what we've got is, under experimental conditions, when we sense something, and something biologically interesting, so it has to be kind of important to the body, like it has to be to do with survival of something. Yeah. Your body has an immediate response, followed about 500 milliseconds later by the mental processing.
Right.
And, there's no explanation as to how that is happening yet.
Right. Wow.
But there we go. That's what we're dealing with. So what they're studying are things like pain contagion and emotional contagion. So with pain contagion, all animals feel pain when they see another animal in pain.
Right.
And they get we all get an immediate reflex in our spine that recognizes the painful stimulus, and it's directly proportional to the pain. So if it's really severe, then ours is really severe, and so on. And then after that comes a behavioral response as to what you do about it. So do you rush forward and help, or do you run away because people are getting chopped up? So, but there's this disparity of like an immediate contagion of pain in your own body. Right. And this can be really specific. And so tests on people who work with chronic pain, nurses who work with patients who've got chronic pain, will get the pain of their patients. Wow. Which is pretty depressing, because
it is.
People have got looked after. Yeah. And it's quite specific. So if they're nursing someone who's got pain in the left hip, then their threshold for pain in the left hip is lower than the right hip. So they're kind of measuring it neurologically. It's not just asking them.
Right.
Because a lot of these nurses don't know that they're picking up pain contagion.
Right. Wow.
So it's happening in the body, not necessarily with anyone knowing.
Are you going to get onto how we can avoid that? I'm just thinking about being a professional shiatsu practitioner with people in pain.
Yeah, I know, but it passes. Get over it. I think. No.
I was going to say, it's different if you're nursing someone like every day for weeks and weeks and weeks, surely, and just seeing someone for an hour and then seeing another person for an hour and so on.
Yeah. It's all about attention, and as soon as your attention shifts, it goes.
I see. Okay, great. Phew.
Yeah. So, yeah. Which is why when I shut the shiatsu door, that's it. I never think of you again.
Yes, very wise.
because otherwise I'll just carry it around.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so emotional contagion. Again, all animals experience emotional contagion, and it happens between species. So and for all sorts of evolutionary reasons, it's really important to catch anxiety. If the dog gets anxious, I need to get anxious because the dog spotted something that I need to be anxious about. You know, there's all sorts of reasons why emotions are contagious. That's really beneficial and really adaptive. But the downside is mass hysteria, you know, mass anxiety, mass depression, just through the media. You know, we're really, really sensitive to emotional contagion.
Right.
And we get it from very tiny little glimpses of facial expressions and from body postures. And so if we're being bombarded daily by, you know, certain imagery, we don't stand a chance basically of not catching the group contagion, the group emotion.
Yeah.
Okay. So how does it happen? We're getting on to the how does it happen bit.
Do you want to take some questions?
It comes down to the fact that all our perception is oh yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple of questions.
Hold on, I haven't been looking at questions.
Biggie or Birgit, says, in the experiment, did every single blind person react to the picture in the experiment that you were talking about before?
Yes, the facial expressions, yes. And also some people had only one half of their brain damaged and not the other half, and they divided them up and showed them the photo on one side and the photo on the other.
Wow.
So they were their own control.
Excellent. Wow. And Pascal asked, does emotional contagion work with
dog walk with the limp? Yeah.
Does emotional contagion work with both negative and positive emotions?
It's stronger with negative emotions for the obvious reasons that it's about survival. So what's the most contagious is are all the negative things, because they mean you've got to do something to survive. You've got to do something about it.
Very quickly as well, probably.
Yeah, very quickly. But we do, you know, we catch laughter, we catch smiles. Yeah. So it's just a matter of speed. We catch the negative ones faster. If you put a load of facial expressions, if you put like 40, 50 facial expressions up and ask someone, and they're all neutral, but one of them has an emotion, and you ask the person to find the one emotional face, they'll find a fearful face much quicker than they'll find a smile.
Right. Okay. So we're just tuned up for that.
Again, is a bit depressing, isn't it?
Well, it just shows you how much more careful we've got to be. Look at James here. James was a nurse for 10 years, and he's been working on his left hip for 4 years with Qigong Shiatsu. So there we are.
Oh dear. Oh dear. Yeah. No, I mean, it is an occupational hazard. Okay. So when I was at university, we were told there were probably 7, 8 or 9 senses at the most, and the latest is 53.
Wow, that's a lot of senses.
So most of those are inside,
right.
But that's relevant. That's relevant because we're going to get onto that. So what happens is we participate in our perception of anything. So when you look at this apple, you're only recognizing that as an apple because your brain is activating how it would feel if you interacted with it, the weight of it, the fact that it is 3-dimensional, and so, you know, it's a sphere. It's not just a circle on your retina. You're working out the 3-dimensionality of it, and you're working out that it's an apple as opposed to a ball because your brain is then simulating crunching and eating it, and it's, you know, associating it with apple trees and all sorts of stuff. So when you perceive just a really simple thing like an apple, your body is going through all sorts of activations of physical interaction with it, and that's why perception is said to be embodied. Your body is involved in perceiving even a simple thing like an apple. Yeah. Your whole minded body perceives the client, not just your brain. And we tend to be taught at school that, you've got 5 senses, they send information to the brain, your brain works things out. And that's not remotely how it works.
Right.
Nothing like it. It's setting us all back by using that conceptual model. Right. The body is actually a 3D simulator. So everything you pay attention to, your body simulates in 3 dimensions as your own experience. That's the way you understand experientially. Yes. And that will be interpreted by the brain, and you will then be able to think about it, and you'll be able to cognitively process it. But that first stage of just experiencing through simulation is how all other animals understand the world. When they look at you, when your dog looks at you and you're crying, he knows you're upset because he's feeling it. He's simulated it in his own body. He feels it. He doesn't need to work out that you're sad because you've got tears coming down and what tears mean. He doesn't need to do any of that. He just feels it. And, this has all sorts of implications for us in our lives and how we interact with people. Everything you pay attention to, you simulate, and that includes what you think about.
But that seems to be a key thing that you keep repeating as well. It's all to do with attention, where your attention is. And that rings loads of bells for me about the attention economy and how social media sucks people's attention away from them and how it manipulates them at a subconscious level and all that kind of thing.
Totally, because they know how it works.
What, social media companies, you mean?
They know exactly how it works. And video game designers know how it works, and advertisers know how it works. This is why they use particular words so that your body reacts. And they use particular phraseology so that your body reacts, and so you get an emotion. And because it's non-cognitive, you don't know it's happening to you.
Yeah, I know. I remember seeing some studies about that, about how social media companies have actually changed people's behavior by introducing subconscious tweaks to their timeline and things like that.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing that does absolutely terrify me about what's going to happen for the next generation is that the artificial intelligence behind the screen now knows so much about how your unconscious works that you don't stand a chance.
Right.
We're like little school kids playing with we don't stand a chance because we don't even know the rules of the game. And we're attempting to understand the AI. And so our brain is trying to couple with this artificial intelligence. And as soon as your brain is coupled, it can be dragged.
Your metamind is creating a metamind.
Yep, a metamind, and then dragging it.
Right, yes.
Because that's how mothers teach their infants. Their brains couple, and then the mother shifts the way they're thinking and drags the infant's brain physiology with them. And, it's how you teach shiatsu a lot of the time. You set up the conditions and you take the person with you.
Through energy exercises.
And that's what's happening in AI. Because we're trying to understand, say, a video game. You're trying to understand what's going on. Your tiny little brain is trying to couple with this mega artificial intelligence. Anyway, mustn't get dragged off on that. Oh dear. What controls your simulations of others? Growing consensus that an intention to understand others is the most common psychological correlate of physiological synchrony. Yeah, you gotta when you're interested in how something works or how someone works, you're automatically paying attention. And if you've got intention and attention in the same direction, you're going to get physiological synchrony. Your bodies are going to start working together. Your brains are going to start coupling. And as I say, this happens with inanimate objects as well. So, if you're trying to understand a robot, you'll start to mimic the way the robot is behaving and so on. Okay, let's get on. Yeah. All comes down to survival. the need to read people really quickly and respond accordingly. Thinking's too slow and feeling is almost instantaneous. And when I say feeling, I don't mean complicated, how do you feel today? I mean the felt sense. I mean the physical response in your body. Okay. So we have to get to know interoception, because this is the simulator. This is where the simulation goes on. It goes on inside your own body.
Mm-hmm.
So
we've got a poll for this.
You can only,
whenever you're ready.
But you can only feel somatic empathy if you're capable of feeling your own internal sensations. So we've got a poll about that.
And here it is. Just to ask you, here we are. Are you aware of using interoception in your shiatsu treatments? And it goes from yes all the time, yes often, yes sometimes, not sure, and no. There we go. We've got quite a big spread there. We've got a quarter of people not sure or no.
Yeah. Good. Okay. So the point is that interoception is just being aware of things like, do you feel thirsty? Do you feel hot? Are you tired? Do you feel upset? Do you need to go to the toilet? Are you aware of these things? And some people aren't aware of interoception to the point of not being thirsty, not being hungry. Other people are incredibly sensitive interoceptively, and they feel every little ache and pain that goes on in their body, every little digestive juice that's squirting. And we vary enormously. And if you're very good at interoception, like I'm very interoceptively sensitive, it means you're in pain quite a lot of the time, but you're very good at feeling simulations that happen in your body. So there's an upside and a downside. Yeah, it's called transference in other places, but it's not transference. There's nothing being transferred. It's a simulation. Right. Yeah. So we're going to have a practical, it's quite important what you call these things, because the idea that there is something transferring from one person to another is quite different to what the science is actually showing. Yeah. How, because it can happen with inanimate objects, there's nothing being transferred emotionally, but we are simulating what's going on for what we think that inanimate object would be feeling. Yes, it's got a lot to do with autism. Yep. I've got a whole chapter in the book about interoception and autism and somatic empathy and autism. I want to answer Mark's question. Simulation model, what happens when the event process is beyond current range of experience? You can only simulate something you have experienced before, which is why your interpretation of somatic empathy is limited by your life experience. Right. And all your interpretations of everything, all your perceptions, even of the apple, all your perceptions are based on your experience. So it's just incredibly subjective. Everything is incredibly subjective. And this is why, sometimes I'll be working on someone and I can feel something, but I don't recognize it. But I know I'm feeling something. I just haven't experienced it before. It's nothing like anything I've had before. Even if it can be really strong, it's not something recognizable.
I think that's really interesting for shiatsu training as well, because the whole Masanaga system is based through experiential learning of the movement of energy of the meridians. And it's something I've noticed is that unless you've actually experienced or developed an awareness of some of the meridian functions, you just don't pick it up. Like it just doesn't appear in the hara. You just don't get any information when you get to that zone. I remember when I first started doing shiatsu back in the mists of time, I only knew about the gallbladder and the bladder, and they were the only two meridians I ever picked up.
Yeah.
And that must be that process then going on.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about perception is that it's always, all it's interested in, your mind, is finding out what's relevant to you.
Right.
So even if we think we're trying to look after our client, our unconscious mind is really only interested in looking after us. What's relevant to me?
Okay.
How does this relate to me and my
I see.
experience? Have I experienced this before? Yes. How can this help me? And that's unfortunately, that's the nature of biology, and that we're, as biological beings, our unconscious, our adaptive unconscious is trying to look out for us the whole time. So it'll be looking for stuff that it recognizes, and it will be looking for stuff. Now, it doesn't mean that you have to literally have experienced everything that you recognize. So, for example, I had a client with prostate cancer. Now, I've never had cancer and I haven't got a prostate because I'm female. But what I did feel from him was a systemic, like the whole body was wrong. Right. And it really bothered me so much that I told him he should go and have tests. Right. But I couldn't locate cancer and I couldn't locate the prostate, but I felt wrong. Yes. And I know wrongness. I've had wrongness before from various things, and it felt wrong. And he went and had tests and found out he'd got prostate cancer. So it doesn't have to be literally that you can only sense what you've experienced, but you have to have a way in from your own experience.
That kind of answers Linda's question, doesn't it? Will you default to the closest experience you've had? Yeah.
Yes. Which is why I really suggest to people that they don't overinterpret, because it'll all be yours. That's the thing. So let's say I'm working on someone and I get a rush of anxiety that has a certain quality to it. It's useful to know that that's my simulation of their experience.
Right.
Yeah. I haven't caught bad energy from them. I've simulated something that doesn't feel very pleasant for me. Yeah. But it's my simulation of what's going on for them, and it's still useful.
Yes.
But it's really important to know that you're not directly knowing what's going on. You're inferring from simulation. And the reason is that that's how we do everything. That's how we infer reality, is we simulate reality and we guess what it is. That's physics. There is no independent reality, I'm afraid. So that's what we do with clients as well. We simulate what our mind is guessing is going on for them. And the good thing is it's really useful at getting past social niceties and getting past their conscious awareness. So you just get quite authentic information.
Yes.
So someone could come in and say they feel fine, but you get this rush of anger. You don't feel that fine.
But I think that's one of the main values of shiatsu, actually, and that's why I think clients value it as well. The
feedback,
and also that contact, that listening, that isn't listening. The attention. Totally. It's the attention.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's you're genuinely being heard when someone is sharing your experience of lived experience, your lived experience for a whole hour. You can't beat that kind of, oh my God, they really know me, more than I know myself.
I get that with a lot of my regular clients. I say, how are you? And they say, you tell me.
Yeah.
Okay, so what's the practical exercise?
When I come to you, I always say I feel fine, and then I discover I'm not.
You pay for that?
Okay. Right, so we're going to do this. We're going to do this exercise, and it might seem a bit silly to you, but I want you to have a go. We've simplified it. I've simplified it down to one sense. Okay. So we've got one sense, the visual sense. I'm going to show you an image, and the thing is, we need to set ourselves up before so that we can feel the somatic response. So you've all been trained shiatsu practitioners, so you need to sit yourself in a nice aligned position where you can clear as much somatic information as possible. So you're not you're not uncomfortable, you're not in pain. get an idea of how you feel now. So check your interoception. And I think there's one more slide before we get to the image, so I'm just going to go past it. But I want you to ask yourself, you have to set up the right intention. So your intention is to be intrigued as to how this person in the photograph is feeling right now. That's your intention. How are they feeling right now? And the answer will be in your interoception. You, in your own body, will simulate the answer for you. So the image is coming up now. Don't write down any answer. Don't draw any diagrams, but feel the immediate, less than 500 milliseconds, the immediate response in your body. How does this person feel? So we don't need long.
It was instant.
It's just an image.
Yeah.
Instant. Yeah. I hold my breath.
I felt this whole feeling like
yeah. Hold, yeah, and gasping, which I think is holding my breath.
And then that changed a little bit, probably a few more milliseconds later, sort of anticipation of what it would be like to actually hit the water. Yes. But that was a different thing.
Yeah, hold.
The first thing was like,
yeah, you go, and then the brain starts anticipating.
Right.
Because the brain, you know, the brain is an anticipator, it's a predictor, and it's constantly trying to work out what's coming next. Okay. So very, very subtle, but that's just from a few seconds of one sensory receptor, just your eyes. So we're going to do another visual one now, and I want you to do exactly the same.
Okay.
I want you to set yourself up. Get the right intention. So I'm going to have to flick through 2 slides now, aren't I?
I tell you what, get everyone to close their eyes, get to the right slide and get them to open their eyes.
Yes. Close your eyes. That's a good idea. Close your eyes. And then as you open your eyes, inquire how this person is feeling now.
Can we open them now?
You can open your eyes now.
Whoa, that was horrible. That was a really horrible one.
Yeah, all the blood goes to the top of my head.
I felt much more of like a physical blow, like a shock thing. And I felt a very strong instinct to put my hand out.
Yeah. Oh, you're good at this, Cliff. Have you ever thought about being a shiatsu therapist?
No, I'd never do anything like that.
So what we've got here are just a few, less than 2 seconds of one sensory receptor. We're going to try an audio one now. So a different sense, because it's not all to do with the eyes. No. Yeah. So just setting yourselves up.
Are you ready?
And see what happens. See what happens to your body when we do this.
Here we go.
Yep. Yeah, that's good.
You see, it doesn't always have to be negative.
It's almost, I couldn't help the sides of my mouth going up.
No.
Even though it was a weird laugh.
It wasn't quite a strange laugh, but it was still effective though.
Yeah. We're just so sensitive to simulating what's going on with our senses. So we've looked at just something with the eyes and something with the ears, and what you've got to remember is we've got 53 senses that are all changing in different directions, and they're all being cross-referenced and collated. And so when we're interacting with another live human being, we have a huge amount of information, which I'll go into in a minute, that your mind infers and simulates what's going on for others based on your own experience. Shifting your attention and intention changes your somatosensory response. Yeah. So what scientists are coming up with is saying you're not catching anything. You're not having anything transfer from one person to another. You're getting signals that are transferring, but you are turning those signals into a simulation.
Yeah. And they're not even sure what those signals are by the sound of it.
No, well, they're too complicated to, like, let's go here.
Yeah.
Touch, for example, amplifies everything. You know, in experimental tests, touch amplifies physiological synchrony. So your heart and breathing, your autonomic system starts to synchronize when you touch. Emotional contagion is exaggerated when you touch. Pain contagion is exaggerated. Brain coupling is exaggerated when you touch.
Wow.
In tests, people can tell the emotion of the person who's touching them. They can tell whether the touch is accidental or intentional. And they've also done experiments showing that your receptive fields of your receptors extend into your client. So you start to take psychological ownership of the client as you're physically interacting with them. And that basically means that you become the one continuum that is, used as our conceptual model anyway.
Say that last bit again. About the extending bit. Just say that last bit, the extending bit. What do you mean by that?
Okay. Receptive fields are dead groovy. So, you know that you've got receptors in the end of your fingers, and if they fire off if they're touched. But if an object comes towards your fingers, some of them will fire off before they're touched, and that's called the receptive field of the receptor extends outside of the body. Now, if I hold a long pole and try to do something technical with the end of the pole, like change a light bulb with the end of a pole, my receptive field will go all the way to the end of the pole so that I can feel what's going on at the end. So receptive fields extend into what we're paying attention to. And when we're working on a body, and both hands in contact, all our attention, our receptive fields of all our 53 senses are extending into them. What happens then is we take psychological ownership.
Right.
As in, and that's quite a technical thing, as in, our brain interprets it as our response.
Right.
So this adds to how you feel somatic empathy, is because, you're actually you're feeling it.
You're what we would call tuning into the person, tuning in physically through your touch, kind of thing.
Yes, and when you do that, you are extending your receptive field voluntarily.
Right.
That thing you do of projecting out of your fingers into the person, that you are literally extending your receptive field into the body.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah, and that's well cool.
That's amazing. Yeah. Well, that just totally backs up what's just a very common experience, isn't it, when you're doing body work?
Yeah. I think that's what I'm saying, really, is that, I'm not telling you anything new, but I'm telling you that science is catching up with what we do.
But also, wouldn't that explain why different types of body work have a different type of touch, because your intention is different. Like if you're scanning into a meridian, it's going to be different from physically touching a muscle or whatever, the lymph or whatever.
I think it's crucial, because the conceptual model you have is really important, because that's how you're going to structure your simulations. Right. And then the type of touch that you have is going to give you the information you want. Right. I mean, this is why you only really ever find information that you want. It's because, you're not going to find information that you haven't set out to find, because that's not how perception works.
I've got it. Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah. So what we've got here is, in a touch situation, is systems analysts who are incredible mathematicians. These are people who just blow my mind with their ability to play with maths. And they look at humans as informational systems. Yeah. And they say that when a manual body worker is paying attention and intentionally working on another human being, the amount of information transferred between the two systems is so complex that science cannot cope with it at the moment. Right. It's beyond scientific comprehension.
We do that every single day.
I know. And that's why I say we're at the forefront, of human understanding of this, because we're doing it experientially and intuitively, and scientists are trying to shift it across into the analytical rational to try and understand what's going on. But this, and they are very, very interested and trying to come up with explanations that fit our experience rather than the other way around.
Amazing, we've got a couple of questions here. Have you spotted these ones? Teresa asks, could it be sometimes be counter-transference?
Well, these terms, transference and counter-transference, are phrases are words for describing what I'm describing. I'm just using, we're just using different words. The reason I don't like using the word transference and counter-transference is because it implies there is something transferring between you.
Okay. And
it's like I try not to use the word catching. I mean, it is worth saying, because I've heard it a lot from shiatsu practitioners, that they feel sometimes they're catching bad energy from someone. And I really want to draw attention to the fact that that is not the current understanding of what's happening. Now, when you're simulating what's going on for someone, you might feel bad because you're simulating something that's unpleasant. And so it feels like you're catching bad energy from them, but you have generated it. And when you shift your attention, it will eventually go.
I think that's really positive, a really positive thing to share. Here we go. Here's again. The question, when this is an interesting one, I wondered about this. When the client's asking, what did you feel, has to be answered a bit differently, or she says very differently, or with a question back, because you're feeling your own response to that.
Yeah, but you see, what you're doing is, it's like you're being a simulator is really useful. It's still real. It's as real as, I mean, you're simulating your whole reality. I'm simulating, what's going on all the way around me. And that, you have to take that on board. It's not a special thing that we do with people that we simulate. The body's simulating everything. So if I look at a tree falling over, my body will be simulating falling. That is what the body does. It's a simulator. And so when a client asks what we felt, we can genuinely say what we felt, what we experienced. When I'm working with you, this happens to me. And it's still useful to them, isn't it?
Exactly.
And I take time to stress what I can't feel as well.
Right.
Because I do find that some clients think that if you think everything's okay, then everything's okay. And I say, no. Just, I haven't picked anything up that's,
Here's a question from Mark. Is it that the intention to extend the field gives the sense of psychological ownership? There's a sense of volition or agency. I think that's when we think about extending the field again.
Yeah. So what happens with psychological ownership is that when we're babies, we learn what is our body and what isn't by whether it responds to our commands. So I know that this is my hand because when I try and move it, it moves.
Right.
Yeah. We don't actually naturally own our body. We have to kind of guess which bits are ours and which bits are others. And we're constantly doing that, even as adults. Your brain is constantly trying to predict which bits are you and which bits aren't. And it gets it wrong a lot of the time. If you amputees, they still think they've got a leg, and if you put a mirror in front of them, the pain goes. It's so complicated, but it's all to do with body ownership. And when we are working on a client and we've got two hands in contact and we move this hand and the other hand moves through their body, our brain takes psychological ownership of their body as if it's ours.
Interesting.
Because it's responded to our intentions.
Interesting.
And people do it with cars.
With cars?
Because the car obeys your unconscious commands.
Right.
And so you psychologically take ownership of it, which is why people get so upset if you cut them up. It's a threat.
That's quite, because I don't own a car, I gave up, I can't be bothered with them. But it's amazing how emotional the response is when you tell that to people. They go, I couldn't do without my car.
But because you drive unconsciously, once you've learned to drive, it's all unconscious. So the car goes around a corner with just at your intention.
Right, true, yeah.
And it stops just with your intention, you know, because the movements are so automatic. So, you know, there's a very slight psychological ownership of the car as an extension of your body.
I think it can be much more than slight in some people, but let's not go there. Right, okay. So,
anyway.
Sorry.
Well, no, I just wanted to end up with the, you know, telling shiatsu practitioners, like, you're at the forefront of social perception research. And, you know, there's going to be more coming thick and fast on what they're finding out, because it's just the new hot topic.
It's fantastic, Cindy. We're relying on you to keep your ear to the ground and tell us all about it and regular webinars. I can't wait.
Good. No questions left?
Let me see. Are there any other questions? Oh, Alex says, I do that on my bike all the time. So obviously he's got psychological connection with his bike there. So... Oh yeah, okay. Helen wants to know, clarify, what does it mean if I take psychological ownership of a person?
No, you don't. You don't take psychological ownership of the person. You take psychological ownership of the body part that you are paying attention to and working with. So, as I said, if you've got two hands on a person across the body, and you intend to move your right hand and your left hand moves on them, your brain psychologically owns that whole strip in between your two hands.
Right, that's it. Okay.
You don't own a person.
No, you don't own the person, no. It's just it's like more like a connection, isn't it? Are they coming thick and fast now?
Yeah.
Rachel wants to know when your book's coming out. I think we all do.
Yeah, we all
including
do.
You,
yeah.
right?
Me too. This year is a definite. But,
we're all waiting. We're all waiting. We'll have to get you on do a webinar for the book launch.
It's going to the editor Easter Friday, so we'll see.
Pascal just wonders if there's any opportunities to contribute to research as shiatsu practitioners, whether they're actually enrolling anyone.
The trouble is, the trouble is that, as I've said before, when we're talking about shiatsu research, is that we are too complicated.
Right.
You know, you've got one person oozing molecules and biofields interacting with another person oozing molecules and biofields, and you've got these two-minded bodies. There are too many variables. Right. And what they do in research is they try and minimize the number of variables and just look at one thing at a time to try and understand each part. You know how reductionist science is.
Yeah, sure, absolutely, yeah.
So that's why they're slow. Oh yeah, I haven't got to the...
Oh,
this
there we
is
are.
my book.
There's the answer, Karen Lisa. It's right there.
Yeah, and I will let you know when it's done.
Every member of New Energy Work across the globe will know as soon as it's out. I can guarantee that. Absolutely guarantee it. There we go. Now, I've helpfully put a link to Cindy's website in the email that will be coming out to everyone who's watched it either live, or I know lots of people do watch the recording. Hi there if you're watching the recording, because we had well over 200 people, 260 people sign up. So hope you really enjoy it. I'll make sure it goes on YouTube as well for you, Cindy. And just wanted to say, on behalf of everyone, I'm just going to have a look in the chat. I'm sure you'll get plenty of hearts coming in the chat. It's a great pleasure. I always have so much fun and learn so much every time we have you on the webinar, and it's just a great pleasure. And also, I think it's just an amazing feeling to realize that, like you say, that there is an explanation that's emerging about what we just do every day of our lives, kind of thing. It's just so, affirming. It's very, very affirming. Yeah,
it is affirming.
And so thank you so much on behalf of the whole group.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, nice to see you all.
Okay, well, we keep in touch, and we've got plenty of things coming up. Watch out for the emails. Next week we've got a small group for members, And then just straight after that, we've got ISCO USA coming up. So keep an eye out for the emails and make sure you register for anything you're interested in. Okay, good night, Cindy. Good night, everyone. Thank you so much. We'll close up now.
Bye. Bye.